Before Mustangs ruled the drag strip, another Ford was quietly breaking necks and records. The Fairlane, often overlooked, often underestimated, housed some of the quickest factory weapons Detroit ever dared to unleash. From high-winding K-codes to fire-breathing Thunderbolts, these weren't your dad's commuter cars. These were street assassins disguised in steel, and once they launched, there was no looking back. Only taillights and tire smoke. You might think of the Ford Fairlane as a tame mid-size cruiser, perfect for Sunday drives and school runs. But beneath that mild-mannered image, Ford hid some of its wildest performance engineering. Across the 60s, the Fairlane transformed into a serious muscle contender, packing everything from 289 high-post screamers to monstrous 427s. In this video, we're counting down the 8 quickest Fairlanes ever made. Cars that defied expectations, outran GTOs, and in some cases, rewrote the rulebook on factory speed. You'll discover rare specs, production secrets, and why these Fairlanes are now collector gold. Buckle up, because some of these will blow your mind. Top 1. 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. It wasn't a car, it was a factory-loaded time bomb. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt didn't ask for permission. It detonated on the quarter mile, leaving smoke, disbelief, and broken egos behind. Ford didn't just bend the rulebook, they ripped it in half and dropped a 427 into a compact shell that barely passed for street legal. Born from Ford's total performance era, the Thunderbolt was an inside job. Ford grabbed 100 lightweight Fairlane two-door sedans and turned them over to Dearborn Steel Tubing Company. Every ounce of weight was scrutinized. Steel front fenders and hoods replaced with fiberglass. Side windows, gone, replaced with plexiglass. Bumpers, fiberglass too. Radio, heater, sound deadening, deleted. Even the battery was relocated to the trunk for better traction. Under the hood sat the real warhead, a 427 cubic inch FE high-riser V8 borrowed from Ford's NASCAR arsenal. Rated conservatively at 425 horsepower, it breathed through dual Holley 4-barrels, a towering intake manifold, and a functional Ram Air hood scoop. Paired with a 4-speed top-loader or optional C6 automatic and 4.11 rear gears, it was built to crush the 1/4 mile in just 11.6 seconds on slicks right off the showroom floor. This wasn't a muscle car in the romantic sense. It was barely civilized. It idled like a caged animal. Drivers had to deal with rough, cold starts, rattling interiors, and a complete lack of comfort. But to the diehards, that was the point. It wasn't built for show, it was built to win. And it did, destroying superstock classes and embarrassing GM and Chrysler in the process. Only 100 units were ever produced and many were wrecked during their drag strip careers. Survivors today are ultra rare and fetch over $200,000 at auction, especially those with original drivetrains or untouched bodies. It's now recognized as one of the most extreme factory-built muscle cars of all time. The Thunderbolt wasn't alone for long. Ford had tasted blood, and the next Fairlane would double down with sleeker lines and another factory big block lurking beneath its skin. Top 2. 1966 Ford Fairlane 500R Code 427. It looked like your uncle's grocery getter, but under the hood it hid Ford's most lethal secret. The 1966 Fairlane 500R Code 427 wasn't about flair or flash, it was a cold-blooded quarter-mile assassin. A mid-size menace born straight out of Ford's racing skunkworks. By 1966, Ford was all in on its total performance campaign, and the Fairlane 500 quietly became the company's favorite sleeper chassis. Unlike the flamboyant Mustang or full-size Galaxy, the Fairlane's trim mid-sized frame was just right, big enough for big block power, small enough to keep it light. And when the recode option was selected, all bets were off. That R code meant one thing: a 427 cubic inch FE V8, the same engine that powered Le Mans-winning GT40S and NHRA monsters. Dual Holley 4-barrels, solid lifters. Aluminum intake, 11.61 compression, officially rated at 425 horsepower, but, in truth, pushed over 500. Connected to a top-loader 4-speed manual and a 9-inch rear with 4.11 gears, it was purpose-built for domination. This thing didn't bark, it detonated. Visually, it gave you nothing. No Cobra badges, no hood scoops, no racing stripes, just a thin steel body with plain dog-dish hubcaps and vinyl bench seats. Inside was a heater, no radio, and a floor shifter. Even the tack was optional. But look closer. Heavy-duty suspension, beefed-up driveline, reinforced shock towers, and a trunk that could barely contain its own battery relocation kit. Only 57 units of the 1966 Fairlane 500 R Code 427 were produced, making it one of the rarest big-block factory builds in muscle car history. Today, a clean, documented survivor can fetch over $250,000, and original drag-prepped versions can demand even more. It was built to win, not to impress, and that's exactly what collectors respect. A street-legal time bomb that still commands silence and reverence at any auction block. But the Recode's savage purity gave way to something more polished in 1967, when Ford combined 390 muscle with optional GT flair. And this time, it wasn't hiding anymore. Top 3 1969 Ford Fairlane Cobra 428 Cobra Jet. It had a name that struck fear, and the muscle to back it up. The 1969 Fairlane Cobra 428 Cobra Jet wasn't subtle, wasn't polite, and definitely wasn't built for comfort. It was Ford's declaration of war against everything from Hemis to GTOs, a straight-linal sledgehammer in coupe form. For 1969, Ford transformed the Fairlane into something meaner. The Cobra package wasn't just marketing. It meant you got the hottest engine Ford had, the 428 Cobra Jet V8. This wasn't a high-revving, small block. This was raw, iron-fisted torque. 335 horsepower, on paper, but real output easily pushed 410-plus horsepower thanks to ram air induction and underrated factory specs. Paired with either a 4-speed top-loader manual or C6 automatic plus optional 3.91 or 4.3 traction lock rear ends, the Cobra could lay rubber across 3 gears and cover the quarter mile in 13.9 seconds, right off the showroom floor. Unlike earlier Fairlanes, this one wasn't pretending to be a sleeper. Exterior cues were aggressive but restrained, a matte black hood treatment, hood pins, and subtle Cobra badging. Inside, it offered more than bare-bones utility. Bucket seats, a floor-mount shifter, and even optional power steering and disc brakes made it feel more refined without losing its edge. This was muscle maturing, but not softening. Underneath, it had heavy-duty suspension, staggered rear shocks, and upgraded cooling systems to survive both Friday night races and Monday commutes. It was the first time the Fairlane looked like a real threat to the Mopars it used to trail. Roughly 14,000 Fairlane Cobras were built in 1969, making it far more common than Thunderbolts or R-Codes, but also much more accessible to collectors. Or rather, pristine examples with original drivetrains and build sheets can reach $90,000+, especially for rarer 4-speed versions. It's one of the last true muscle cars before the era faded into emissions and insurance nightmares. But as the 428S roared into showrooms, Ford was preparing one final twist: a lighter chassis, GT touches, and a 390 that could dance with the big boys without shouting about it. Top 4. 1967 Ford Fairlane GT 390, 4-speed. In 1967, if you knew what to ask for at the dealership, you could drive off in a Fairlane that looked like a family cruiser, but shifted like a Cobra and sounded like trouble. The 390 GT 4-speed wasn't built for posers. It was built for guys who missed third gear on purpose just to hear it scream. The 1967 Fairlane GT was Ford's bridge between the raw Thunderbolt era and the refined Cobra Jet age. And the heart of that bridge? A 390 cubic inch FE V8 packing, a factory-rated 320 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque. It was the same power plant that had already proven itself in full-size Galaxies, but now stuffed into a mid-size frame with attitude. The GT model brought more than just muscle. It came with a dual snorkel air cleaner, upgraded suspension, power front disc brakes, and a floor-mount 4-speed top-loader transmission. With the right gearing, it ran the quarter mile in the low 14s, putting it in striking distance of GTOs and 383 Mopars. Outside, it was all business: GT badging, a domed hood, chrome trim, and optional styled steel wheels. But the real surprise was how tight everything felt. The car wasn't floaty or vague. It had precision in the steering, bite in the brakes, and a bark that echoed through the rear duals. Inside, bucket seats and optional rally gauges gave the Fairlane a sportier edge than its more formal 500 XL siblings. This wasn't just a big eager dump in a bland body, it was a balanced street brawler, one that didn't need stripes or scoops to announce itself. Ford built just over 18,000 Fairlane GTs in 1967, and only a fraction came with the 390 and 4-speed combo. Survivors, with factory documentation and original drivetrains, have become prized sleeper collectibles, often fetching $40,000 to $60,000 at auction, depending on spec and condition. But while the 390 GT laid the groundwork, Ford wasn't done tightening the fuse. The next Fairlane would go full fastback with the same 390, only meaner, leaner, and shaped like a missile. Top 5, 1966, Ford Fairlane GT 390 500 XL. It was wide, it was loud, and it was draped in chrome and bad intentions. The 1966 Fairlane GT 390 in 500 XL trim wasn't just a mid-size muscle car, it was Ford's first real declaration that the Fairlane could throw punches in the heavyweight division. 1966 marked a full redesign for the Fairlane, and the GT variant brought serious heat. Under the hood sat the 390 cubic inch S-Code V8, conservatively rated at 335 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque. It came paired with a top-loader 4-speed manual, or optional Cruise-O-Matic automatic, and it could crack 0 to 60 in about 6.8 seconds. Formidable for a car weighing over 3,400 pounds. The 500 XL trim meant luxury touches, bucket seats with center console, extra chrome, and full-length body moldings. But the GT editions were where the car got real. You got stiffer springs, larger sway bars, and dual exhausts with chrome tips that rumbled like a low-flying jet. The domed fiberglass hood with chrome faux vents wasn't just for show, it screamed muscle at every stoplight. While the outside had muscle swagger, the interior gave off a more refined vibe. Simulated wood grain, optional AM/FM stereo, and deep bucket seats made it feel more upscale than many of its rivals. This wasn't a stripped-out drag car, it was a full-on performance cruiser, with torque to spare and style to flaunt. Despite sharing showroom space with Mustangs, the Fairlane GT 500 XL had a longer wheelbase and wider stance, giving it a planted, menacing look. Add Magnum 500 wheels and redline tires, and you had a Detroit bruiser with country club polish. Ford produced around 30,000 to 50,000 15 Fairlane GTs in 1966, with only a portion in the top trim 500 XL. Today, clean survivors can fetch $30,000 to $50,000, especially with original drivetrains and documentation. The 500 XL remains a sweet spot for collectors who want big torque and vintage flair without Cobra Jet pricing. But if this GT was the gentleman's muscle car, the next one dropped the act. It was a sloped-back fastback with the same 390, but it didn't whisper, it howled. Top 6, 1968 Ford Fairlane 500 Fastback 390 GT. It didn't wear stripes or shout with scoops, but when the light turned green, the 1968 Fairlane 500 Fastback with the 390 GT was already halfway to the horizon. In a year ruled by Chargers and GTOs, Ford slipped this sleeper into the muscle car war, and it hit harder than anyone expected. By 1968, the Fairlane had evolved into a full-fledged muscle contender. The 500 Fastback trim gave it a longer, lower roofline, more aerodynamic, more aggressive. Inside, it was all business: bucket seats, wood grain trim, floor mount shifter, and optional tachometer. But the real story was under the hood. Ford's 390 cubic inch GT V8 was factory rated at 325 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque, breathing through a 600 CFM Holley carburetor and dual exhaust. Mated to a top-loader 4-speed manual or C6 automatic, this combo delivered legit mid-14-second quarter-mile passes, serious speed for a full-size street car. What set it apart was the restraint. No Cobra badges, no Super Duty nonsense. Just a clean, streamlined body, subtle 390 callouts, and an angry growl when provoked. Most buyers didn't realize they were looking at a sub-15-second machine until it barked off the line. The Fairlane 500 GT was the muscle car in a business suit. Production for the 390 GT-equipped Fairlane 500 Fastbacks totaled 12,325 units, but far fewer survive with their original drivetrain and Fastback roofline intact. Today, these cars hover in the $28,000 to $42,000 range, depending on originality and transmission. Restorers are beginning to notice, and prices are climbing. It's not just about numbers, it's about identity. The 390 GT gave Fairlane a purpose: to run quiet, hit hard, and disappear before you knew what passed you. But if the 390 GT was Ford's gentleman bruiser, what happens when that power gets funneled into a GTA badge, where A stands for automatic, but everything else screams street fight? Top 7. 1967 Ford Fairlane GTA 390. It looked civil. Too civil. The 1967 Fairlane GTA had vinyl seats, chrome trim, and a smooth automatic shifter. But press that gas pedal just a little too hard, and you'd wake a beast. The GTA wasn't just a cruiser, it was Ford's silent assassin, with a hard-hitting V8 and zero apologies. In 1967, Ford positioned the Fairlane as a mid-size answer to the GTO and SS396, and the GTA was the upscale evolution of the GT, available only with an automatic transmission. The exterior wore a crisp, angular profile with quad headlamps, horizontal grille, and clean body lines, bucket seats, center console, full instrumentation, and wood-grain appliques rounded out a surprisingly refined interior. But refinement ended at the firewall. The GTA came standard with the 390 cubic inch 4-barrel V8, delivering 320 horsepower and 427 pound-feet of torque. Backed by a C6 Cruise-O-Matic 3-speed and optional traction-lock rear axle, it was capable of 0 to 60 in just 6.6 seconds and a quarter-mile in the mid-14s, on par with the era's broadiest big blocks. This wasn't just a luxury-laced Fairlane. The suspension was stiffened, front disc brakes came standard, and wide oval tires gripped harder than the car's luxury image implied. It didn't bark off the line like a drag car, it surged, clean, composed, and deadly. You thought it was just another automatic Fairlane, until it outran your 4-speed Chevelle. Ford built 18,670 GTA hardtops and convertibles in 1967, but few remain unmodified or rust-free today. The GTA nameplate only lasted 1 year, making it a collector's gem, especially when paired with factory red paint or rare options like the AM 8-track stereo. Clean survivors are now pulling $35,000 to $45,000 at auction, with rising demand for numbers-matching drivetrains. But while the GTA gave Fairlane class and bite, there was one more version that dialed back the flash and leaned into raw purity, a fastback Fairlane with a small block that revved like hell. What it lacked in cubes, it made up for in attitude. Top 8. 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 XL 289K code. Before the 427S and 428S stole the spotlight, there was a lightweight predator hiding in plain sight. The 1966 Fairlane 500 XL 289K code didn't need big cubes or flashy stripes, it just needed revs and the right driver to unleash them. The Fairlane 500 XL was Ford's upscale intermediate for 66, longer, wider, and sleeker than the boxy versions before it. The 500 XL trim added bucket seats, a center console, chrome accents, and ribbed tail panels. Available in hardtop or convertible, it looked refined, almost too refined for the street fights it was quietly picking. But the secret was under the hood. The 289 high-performance K-Code V8, a screamer pulled from the Mustang GT 350's DNA, delivered 271 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. It came with solid lifters, a special camshaft, 10.51 compression, and a 4-barrel Autolite carb. When paired with a top-loader 4-speed manual and optional 3.89 rear axle, this small-block sedan could sprint to 60 miles per hour in just 6.7 seconds, faster than many heavier big-block rivals. No one expected this car to be fast, no emblems screamed "Hi-Po!" and many buyers opted for automatics, never unlocking its true potential. But in the hands of street racers, it was a precision tool, rev-happy, responsive, and hard to catch. The light front end and tight gearing gave it excellent launch control, while the factory dual exhaust crackled with purpose. Only 2,970 Fairlanes were equipped with the K-Code 28A09 in 1966, and far fewer in 500 XL trim with manual transmissions. Survivors are rare and climbing in value, with recent auction results hitting $40,000+ for numbers-matching examples. It's now considered the thinking man's Fairlane muscle, raw speed wrapped in subtlety. But if the K-code was a surgeon's scalpel, what came before it was a sledgehammer in a lab coat. The first Fairlane that broke the rules, and in doing so, broke the quarter mile. We're rewinding to a factory experiment that kicked the whole thing off. From factory freaks to forgotten quarter-mile kings, the Fairlane's legacy runs deeper than most muscle fans remember. These 8 weren't just fast, they were disruptive. Built in secret, raced in silence, and now reborn as blue oval legends, they prove that raw speed sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms. If this list brought back memories or introduced you to a Fairlane you'd never heard of, drop a comment and tell us your favorite. And don't forget to subscribe to Muscle Cars Revolution for more forgotten brutes, factory sleepers, and muscle myths turned reality, because the past still moves fast if you know where to look.